Success for me is that if I ever look back on how I spent my time, that I don't regret any of the steps that I've taken to get where I'm at. And for me, that means that whatever I did, I gave it my all.
You're listening to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast, released bi-weekly every Sunday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple iTunes. Welcome to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Today we have Fareena Aslam. She graduated from Concordia University with a bachelor's in software engineering. She's worked at Telus and now is working at EY as a manager in technology consulting. Fareena is also part of the board of directors at Total Communication Environment. It's a pleasure having you on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So I guess we could kick off starting off with your experience in Pakistan. So do you mind just talking about that?
No, for sure. It's interesting you mentioned Pakistan because my background is Pakistani. My parents are from Pakistan, but I was born and raised in Dubai. Journey with Pakistan is a journey of going back home. It's more of a connection with relationships and building those connections. So when I was used to live in Dubai, Pakistan was our holiday destination. So my mom's from Punjab, my dad's from was raised in Karachi. So that's what's been. So Pakistan for me has always been going back to your roots.
And then shifting from UAE to Canada, that must have been a little definitely challenging because of the weather and
Oh,
Pakistan as well as more.
it's funny you say that because I think this is very common with people who are born and raised in the desert areas of the UAE, Dubai, which is everyone just thinks of like in this whole metropolitan that it is. But we were so looking forward to the snow, to the winter. We just could not just had the first snow. So moving to Canada was always like, oh, is that have our first winter? We'll actually get to see what it feels like. So the first winter was always memorable when you talk about weather in Canada. But then after that, all the winters are the same. Like, okay, now in the winters, you want to go back to Dubai and spend the winters over there because the winters over there were much, much more milder. Back to the point of it, the move from UAE to Dubai to Montreal, that's where we ended up going because I went to university over there, Concordia University, which you mentioned in the beginning, where I did my bachelor's of engineer in software engineering. So yeah, I believe that the reason for that was essentially we moved because of my studies so that I could end up attending that university in that particular degree. Because at that time, Concordia University was one of the few universities that had that program in software engineering. And I really wanted to do the software engineering program. So for me, it was like I was so single-minded that I want to be able to build large systems and solve problems.
So how did it develop during your time in UAE? How did that initial interest develop?
I suppose it's a good question. I think I've always been a problem solver and I've always been innately curious. My dad's an engineer. He's a civil engineer. So he had his business and he was building, he was always doing construction sites and stuff like that. So I've always been around people who've always been problem solving. And it's also about not just solving theoretical problems. So we're not quite like that. But for me, it was like, it's a tangible, what can I do? What can I build that can make things easier? I'm always trying to think of what's the most efficient and
Nice.
optimized way of making a process that I know much more quicker. And I've always been that way. So I think I was 11 years old when I told my dad I want to do a computer programming course. And my dad was like, okay, fine, let's put you in a programming course. And he was fully supportive of wherever I was at. It was never about, and I think that's one of the key things that helped me to figure out where I wanted to be in my studies, in my career, is that I had supportive parents who were like, okay, do what you are good at. But my parents were totally supportive. They're like, okay, do what you feel like you can and flourish, and they gave us the tools and the support to do it. So in a very long-winded way, my interest was there. I was not sporty. To this day, I'm still not that sporty, but put me in front of a computer, I could spend hours in there in front of it and trying to create stuff and build stuff.
And I hear software engineering can be quite, in terms of competitiveness and the people in that cohort. How was your experience in university? Was it actually all right, or how was it?
Oh, I will say. So I think for me it was more of a culture shock because I was coming
Yeah.
from this Middle Eastern country, then switching to Concordia and coming into a completely new environment where it's everyone is together. We're working on projects. There's a lot of collaboration. It's not like a lot of individual contributors. You're forced into this new environment where you have to talk to people, where you have to delegate work, you have to share ideas, and there's no one person saying, "Oh, you are right or you are wrong." I think that for me was the great learning experience. Like everyone could have different point of views and we're all okay to have different point of views. There are different ways of doing things. So for me, that was one of the things that I learned while going to university and learning that there are different ways to solve a problem. In addition to that, when we talk about the competitiveness of the cohort, engineering is notorious for not being very women friendly. So the cohort that I was part of, I believe I was one of 5 women that was
Wow.
graduating in that cohort. So
Mm.
imagine, and how engineering classes are set up. The
Yeah.
initial 2 years, it's everyone across all the various streams. And I think that is what it is. So when you have a very huge collaborative environment and you have supportive colleagues that you're working with you, and there's this innate sense of sharing information. I feel that is what you need to excel. And I think that's what I took away from my cohort and from my time in Concordia. I really enjoyed my time in Concordia. It's my alma mater, but one of the great things about it, it's a teaching university. And you
Okay.
can tell because it was not about, I mean, it was not, grades are important academically, but it was not just about the grades. It was about the connections. It was about the relationships. It was about how can you help and support one another and grow.
So during your university, did you actually do any internships during the summer, or was it you just focused on the studies and then you got the full-time role once you started looking?
So I used to do a lot of volunteer work, and so I love to tutor. So I did a lot of
Okay.
tutoring work. So I think it was during my university years. It was I learned that I love doing mentorship. I love teaching people. I love coaching people, and I think that is what sort of made me sure that I chose the right field. I just cannot be someone who's behind the computer just coding, but I love teaching concepts. And I just enjoyed when my students would just understand the concept. Well, and I had differently aged people that I used to tutor. I would tutor high school students. I would tutor people, well, not kids, but yeah, and earlier in who were starting their university, so in the first year of university. So I think that was what I used to do. But volunteer work was also something that I'm very passionate about. And they used to do a lot of volunteer work as well in university. So
Okay.
be it with the Software Engineering Society or and helping run conferences or attending conferences. So I felt that was a better use of my time in university to build those networks and understand what's happening in the horizon.
Yeah, I find a lot of university students find it hard to get like their first full-time role and at least get in the industry where they have this degree, but then actually getting it, applying it. So how was that process like for you in terms, finally getting your full-time role?
That's a good question. It wasn't that easy. I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you. I wanted to stay in Montreal, and Montreal is a French-speaking city
Oh, right.
within
Yes. Yeah.
Canada. So, in order to get a role as a software engineer within Montreal, I had to be very fluent in French, which I wasn't at the time. So I was and when I say fluent, it's not just being able to speak French, but able to write and read. And it's just, we had to be literally a level 5 French speaker and writer, which I wasn't at the time. I was getting a bit disheartened, and it was contemplating should I move to a different province, but my family was here and I didn't really want to move. So a friend of mine was working at Telus, and they were hiring at the time in their business help desk. It was a small medium business help desk team at Telus, and they were supporting the Western Canada part of the country. So it was all English speaking that they were looking for. They weren't looking for bilingual. So she said, like, just join TELUS. TELUS is a multinational it's a national company. So all you have to do is get your foot in the door. I
Yeah.
was contemplating, I was like, I really want to do what I've worked in. I want to work in software engineering. But you know what? I'm also looking for a job. Just for kicks, I did the whole interview. I did the test, I passed the evaluation, and they offered me the job. And I'm like, okay, I'll get into TELUS and maybe something will come up. And I think that's what happened. I got into TELUS. I started off as the help desk agent for a month or so. And then they saw I was good. I was good at giving them ideas that this is how you can make things efficient. And they transferred me to a different part of the company. And as I switched to a different part of the company, I found another role in in their corporate office, which was more aligned to what I wanted to work in. The title was performance analyst, and I think this is what I would tell all our people who are listening. Don't worry about the titles. Worry about what the work you're doing. So performance analyst does not sound anything like anything remotely related to software engineering. But in essence, performance analyst, that role was helping build efficient systems while marrying business acumen and whatever technology that they had in place. So that was what that role in essence was. And I applied for it internally and I got it. And then when I moved to Calgary, that was the role I was doing. And that's what I did in Telus. So
Wow.
every year I was working on something, some new project, some new cutting edge technology. So while I was at Telus for the 6 years, and at that time, which was not, which was unheard of, using data analytics. So I think that is one of the great things. So what my learning from that is that you just have to keep on trying, and just if it's a company that you really feel that is a big enough corporation that you'll be able to move around in it. There's no harm in starting from the bottom ladder and then
Yeah.
moving all the way up. And I think that's what my journey has been, from where I'm at right now at UI. It's always been like, okay, let's just get my foot in the door and then I move on up and figure out what my role is and what my career needs to be.
In these large companies, it tends to be hard to, like stand, like Brennan, you get in your foot in the door, but then actually showing yourself in front of the manager or senior management so that they recognize and then push you forward. So how was that experience like? Because I feel a lot of people might struggle and might get siloed in a single department rather than expanding their horizon.
That's a very good question. And I believe that's it's actually it's a very important one to address. You are right. It's not just about being the great worker. And I have been guilty of it. I have been guilty of assuming that just because I'm doing the great work, someone's going to notice it and someone's going to advocate for me, and then I'm going to be recognized and I'll be moved into a different location, or a different role, a different department. So my advice for that, and this is learned over time, has been you have to find out who are the people who are willing to sponsor you. You have to build that relationship. It's organic. It cannot be something that you can just, oh,
Of
hey,
course.
can you be my sponsor? Or because I really like what you do and all that. And in these corporate environments, it's always about, okay, you'll move to the next role whenever that seat is empty or whenever that role is empty or whenever someone's moved on or you move to something completely different within the department. That being said, if you're part of a team, your role is to support your senior leadership. And that's how you make yourself known to the senior leadership. If you talk to your senior leadership, understand what the problem is. You have to bring solutions to your senior leadership, not just problems. And I'm someone who loves to poke holes into things and always complain about, okay, this is what's wrong over here, but this is what's wrong over here. You will be able to find the sponsors for it. But at the same time, you have to also know what you want within your role. Where do you see yourself? Do you want to be a people manager? Then you showcase it. You think nowadays in today's industry, it's great. You don't really need the title to be what you want to be in a role. And as long as you keep on acting in that manner, that is what you definitely, that will help you grow and progress. So all the people who will be listening to this is that don't worry about it. Don't focus just on that your work will showcase for it. You have to be a little bit more strategic about it. B, is that when you are trying to showcase stuff to your senior leadership and you're trying to make sure that your senior leadership comes out shining to their senior leadership, be vocal with them. What do you want from your career? If in the next 5 years, 5 years is too long. If in the next 6 months or so, you see yourself, you want to play a pivotal role as a manager leading a team and trying to solve data architecture solutions, tell them. And then be on the lookout for those opportunities. And then you have to build your profile, build your
Yeah.
portfolio, and build your skill sets that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like you had to take the initiative. I think so that's like the biggest thing. Like you can't just like, oh, just work and just assume. I think so that's the main point that you're getting, that Jonas is gonna
I'll
see
tell
it.
you, yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I'll tell you, I have known people who've been great, brilliant people, but they
Yeah.
just get labeled as workhorses, which is a very bad term to use. But essentially, that's what it is. People say these are people who, if you give the work to them, it'll get done. And that sort of limits you in that area because you cannot grow. You cannot go beyond just being someone who just gets work done.
Yeah.
But that being said, if you are someone who likes that role and you just want to be someone who wants to get the work done, it's okay. Not everyone has that drive, and not everyone has to like keep on following or falling down that rat race.
So once you completed your time at TELUS, then you moved on to EY. So how's that experience like?
So even I was so happy at TELUS. I would not lie. I'd been there for 6 years. I had great support from the leadership team and everything. It's always about pushing yourself. Like I said, for me, it's all about the growth mindset. I felt like I was doing great at TELUS, but I wasn't learning. I was doing the same thing. So when an opportunity came to join one of the big fours, which was EY's with being one of them, and this again is in Calgary. And it was also in a very interesting field because it was this mix of digital and emerging technologies. I was like, and then the scope of working in a big four is a different scope of work. And I was like, I wonder what consulting is like. And so I applied for it. And I did get the job. And when I got the job, I remember having this internal conversation that I've been in a very good place at Telus. At least I have that. I have great relationships, so I can always go back and leverage that. But as soon as I joined consulting, it was eye opening. Eye opening to that. Like I said, it's all about, for me, it's all about the learning. And that's
Yeah.
what I got. It was tremendous learning, brilliant people, like they have the best folks you can have around to learn from and different ways of approaching solutions. So for me, EY has been, this year will be 7 years at EY. And it's every month or so, it's a new challenge. And I enjoy. If you see the Fareena that was Fareena 7 years ago before she joined EY, to her and compared to what I am right now, I'm a completely different person
Yeah.
because I now have that, it's a different perspective. And I think that is what I got from working in a big four. And then it's also about you get to work with different clients from a different perspective. When you're a consultant, you're not working for one company, you're working for multiple companies in different capacities.
Right.
And what that helps you do is you see, when I was at TELUS, all my problems were just TELUS. So my
Yeah. Makes
focus was
sense.
TELUS. I could only understand TELUS's this model.
An individual that doesn't know about this specific consulting area, like as a student or person who's interested in the field, like in general, without giving too much like private details or whatnot, but just in general, like how would you explain the role itself?
Within consultancy, there is the business consulting, there's a strategic consulting, there's a technology consultant. You either are a functional consultant or you are someone who is technology, a technologist, so someone who's always doing the implementing the solutions. So given that context, whenever I talk to any students who are interested in consulting, it's always the question like, okay, tell me what are your strengths? What are you good at? Are you someone who likes to do delivery, who likes to build solutions? Then, as part of that, to get into consulting, it's all about how can you, in order to showcase yourself, you have to be able to do a lot of projects. And you have to bring in that portfolio that, oh, if I'm a software engineer, these are the projects I've worked on. This is my show and tell, so to speak. That's what I'm trying to say. But that being said, the other thing is you have to bring that growth mindset. You have to be someone who says, okay, I don't know all the answers, but I know that I'm very passionate about, I'm okay talking to people. Because that's the other part of consulting. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of trying to get to the bottom of it. And it's also about being able to tell a story. Also, for any student or anyone who's interested in joining consulting, you just have to talk to a lot of the consultants out there. And there are a lot of us on LinkedIn and not
Yeah.
just EY, but just across there. There's a whole group out there and learn what each and everyone does. Every consulting company has their own style, their own culture. I
Yeah.
prefer EY. And the reason for that is not just because I'm biased, because I've been at EY for a longer period of time, but it is because I found similar to what I got at Concordia, that collaborative nature, that people are out there. It's all
Yeah.
about your leadership team is there to support you. If you don't know anything, if you're stuck, you have this whole plethora of people that you can reach out to, build your networks and learn from. So for anyone who wants to go into consulting, the mindset that they have to be is like they have to be problem solvers, they have to be curious. They have to, I hate to say this, but you have to be the best of the best in a way. And when I say the best of the best, it means that you have to think beyond what normal someone would think of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to just show that ambition that you want to be here. And if as long as you show the last part, you show that ambition that you want to be part of this team, you wanted to learn from it, the rest you will learn over time. The all the rest of the technologies and how we implement stuff and all of those things, they come with experience. They come with by being in projects.
Got you. Yeah, you pretty much answered my next question, which is how do you get into this industry? So that's awesome. But yeah, moving on to in terms of, I know consulting in general could be quite challenging in terms of the hours, like you mentioned as well. So how do you balance that in terms of making sure that you're sane as a human in terms of work, and then making sure you're best at work as well? Like how do you go about? Do you have a strategy that you go about balancing? Turn off computer once?
No, so I am a workaholic. I will
Yeah.
confess that. And I was afraid of that tendency when I joined the EY because I'm all about, I just want to get the work done.
Yeah.
And my mentality is that if I can get the work done today, by tomorrow, I won't have anything else to do. But it as always backfires on me because tomorrow there'll be new stuff that I have to work over. So for me, the learning part was I'll also start off with that there is a tendency, and it's funny you say it's East meets West, and I'm keep on referencing the West because I was in the western part of Canada. I was in Calgary for quite a long time, and Western Canada has a different concept to work life, and it permeates within your consulting company as well, because your clients are your Western clients and you're
Yeah.
pretty much focused on them. So when you're working with those clients, there is this healthy work life balance. There's no expectation that, so there is no expectation that you'll work after hours, which is after 5. If you
Yeah.
want to, you can work. It's up to you, but there is no expectation from a client side perspective. Well, so that was, and my manager at the time that I was working with was also a huge proponent of the work-life balance. He was like, we're not surgeons. We're not saving lives or killing anyone. So
Yeah.
if we shut down the computer at 5 o'clock and spend time with our families, it will be good. Doesn't harm anyone. So I got those were the messages that I was having. Internally, I was this driven person that I want to get things done so I can be acknowledged that I'm someone who clears things off my plate really quickly. So for me, it was that internal struggle. And the way I've helped myself and my hours was that I know there are certain times in the day where I might end up working longer hours.
Yeah.
It is inevitable. But it's also about being clearly communicating to everyone that like I have a family. So everyone knows before 9 o'clock, I'm unreachable.
Yeah.
9 o'clock in the morning, I might respond to tests. I might do some minor things, but you'll have my full focus at 9 o'clock. And then similarly, after 5 o'clock, if it's urgent, people have my cell phone number. They'll
Yeah.
only text me on on my personal cell after the after hours. With my laptop, my team, everything gets shut down after 5 o'clock, unless it's super important and I myself are online. But I have had to make those adjustments, and that I have to be the one who's responsible for doing so. That third thing is planning. If you plan everything a little bit within these consulting firms and you communicate across the board that, okay, I will finish this part of my statement of work by Friday. So I'll, and you keep on giving people updates. No one's going to be on your case at all times to find out where things are at. So over communication has always been my most used tool in my toolkit, and
Yeah.
it has served me quite well, because I've noticed when I over communicate, it's easier for people to understand where I'm at. And it's also leadership. The people who you work with. Hey, is the expectation when you email me that I need to email you right away? And if so, I cannot do. It's all about just setting up those standards, and then that's how you keep your sanity. Because the other thing is, you need to have that time to yourself. Because I use the time that I'm not working to do some learnings, to do some things that I want to, my passion projects and my
Yeah.
volunteer work that I want to follow up on. So I need to be explicitly clear to everyone that this is what I'm doing so that everyone understands where my time is being spent.
Got you. And were there any specific groups in consulting or in general that helped you progress? Or was it mostly just you were doing your own thing and through volunteering or just meeting others on LinkedIn and or was there like a specific dedicated group for consulting that you leveraged to learn?
Well, listen, I learn best from people. So it's all, so for me, it's finding people that I within EY and sometimes with
Yeah.
outside as well. I think the right way to say about this is that within EY, I had this great group of women in the Calgary office that we used to all come together and just have a conversation on the challenges we felt being women in STEM, being within this consulting industry, being in this group. We're working with oil and gas people who are these engineers, process oriented. So how to get them to think creatively, and so I think being in that in that safe space environment was where I learned best. For okay, this works well for me. This does not work well for me. And then what I figured out on is that everyone has their own style. And I just had to figure out what my style of working or my style of approaching consulting is. So for
Yeah.
me, my style is I'm personable. I like to talk things through. I am not pushy with my solutions, but I'm more about, okay, tell me what you have. And so I've landed on over the years that this is my style of communication. This is my style of solutioning. This is my style of bringing everyone together. And and it's also being self-aware of what your strengths are. I'm a big proponent of I cannot work on my weaknesses. My weaknesses will always be there. There will always be my weaknesses. Me spending effort and time on my weaknesses is not time well served. I rather hone my strengths and acknowledge my weaknesses and figure out who do I need to have in my team that can supplement those weaknesses or become my weaknesses and help us become a high performing team. So for me, that's always been my mantra. And I think that sort of helped me. Outside of that, in LinkedIn consulting groups, I'm a member of data groups. But I said I don't really like to be part of just one group. And I think that's why I
Yeah.
love consulting is that I don't want to be boxed as, oh, Fareena Aslam is just this software engineering person who likes to build
Yeah.
stuff. No, I like to be this, but I also like to be someone who understands how data architecture is done, I also like to be someone to understand, okay, this is this new generative AI is coming up. So how do we leverage it? How do we use it? How do we work with it? So I think for me, I'm more interested in hearing from different points of views. And so I think for me, the learning is like the more I learn from others and different perspectives, and not just from within my field, even outside. I want to
Yeah.
always be constantly surprised and always be interested. Oh, this is something new. I don't know how to do it. How do I do it?
So I guess like I know we asked this to all our guests, but in terms of how you define success, both you could go either professional or personal. Like, what does success mean to you?
So for success for me is that if I ever look back on how I spent my time, that I don't regret any of the steps that I've taken to get where I'm at. And for me, that means that whatever I did, I gave it my all. And what that basically means is that if I'm, and to be honest, I think it's being honest with myself that I cannot do everything. So success for me is to understand what I'm letting go. I'm acknowledging that I have to be okay with letting that go. And whatever I'm able to achieve is what I always intended to achieve. I don't know if that answers the question, but for me,
Nope,
success is
that's
it's not about what I have or what objects I've collected or accolades I've got. But for me, success would be a life lived, but a life well lived that has been in service, that I've been able to contribute to society as well. I still like think that would be is success and doing that.
no, it did. It definitely did. Yeah, it was. I find like I leave it till the end so that it's like people can think about it. That's not. Thank you for taking the time to get on this interview. Like, it's been really insightful talking about different areas in the technology space as well as your journey from software engineering to consulting. It was a pleasure having you on this interview, and thanks for sharing.
No, thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation. It does harken back to where was I and gives me that
Yeah.
perspective of I'm thinking over my journey over the past 10 years, 10, 12 years of where I was and where I'm at right now. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for the great questions and for the conversation.